I study inequality for a living, and for most of my career I focused on the divides of class and race. But in recent years I've just been noticing more and more gender gaps. Probably like most of you, I'm used to thinking about gender equality and the goal of gender equality as synonymous with the advancement of women and girls. But it's now clear that there are many boys and men who've fallen behind, and that we have to be able to think about gender inequality in both directions. But it's clear that, on some measures at least, now men are lagging quite a way behind, not least on college campuses. And that reflects the fact that boys are trailing girls throughout the education system. And it's not just in the US. If we look at the 20 most economically advanced countries in the world, there's on average a 13 percentage point gap in the share of young men and young women with a college degree, with young women much more likely to have a college degree. But not all boys and men are struggling in the same way. The intersection of gender with class and race really matters here. So boys from poorer households and middle-class households much less likely to attend college than girls from the same background. But there's a much smaller gap at the top of the economic ladder. I think one of the reasons that elites can sometimes struggle to grasp what's going on with boys and men is that the gender gaps are just much less stark in affluent communities. So anybody who really cares about boys and men has to care about racial injustice and economic inequality. Now, the fact that the education system doesn't seem to be working very well for lots of boys and men is obviously not intentional. There wasn't a feminist conspiracy 100 years ago to say, well, it might take a century, but eventually we'll overtake them. Because it was men who mostly designed the school system. What's happened is that as the artificial and sexist barriers that were placed in front of women and girls have been successively removed, so their natural advantages in the classroom have been revealed. Compared to girls, boys face two big structural disadvantages in education. First, their brains simply develop later. Their skills of planning, organization, and impulse control are associated with the prefrontal cortex, which develops in adolescence, especially, but about a year later on average for boys than for girls. Girls have a reasonable balance between impulse control and sensation seeking. But it's a very different story for adolescent boys. They have higher levels of sensation seeking, and with that less developed prefrontal cortex, they have significantly lower levels of impulse control. It's not that girls are smarter than boys. There's no gender gap in intelligence levels in either direction. It is just that girls develop more of these non-cognitive skills, these chemistry homework skills, somewhat earlier than boys do. That's just a fact, but it is a fact that we ignore in education policy. The second big structural problem that boys face in the classroom is the lack of male teachers. And the lack of male teachers matters for at least three reasons. First, for many children, can be an important male role model, perhaps especially if they don't have one at home. And second, male teachers appear to be more sensitive to the specific challenges of boys in the classroom. The reason male teachers may matter is there's some evidence that, especially in subjects like English, which is where the boys have fallen so far behind, having a male teacher seems to dispel the idea that reading and writing just aren't for me, for people like me, in a similar way to how having a female teacher has historically helped girls in STEM subjects. When 1 in 4 of our boys has a developmental disability, it seems clear to me that it is the system which is disabling, rather than the boys who are disabled. There's a lot we can do to make the education system work better for boys, but let's start with those two big problems of later brain development and lack of male teachers. So first, we should start boys in school a year later. And the idea there is to level the playing field, given those differences in the timing of brain development. We need to recruit hundreds of thousands more male teachers, especially in subjects like English, where the boys are struggling so much, and which is the subject men are least likely to be teaching. Recognize and respect the ways in which he's different. Don't say, why can't you be more like your sister? Right? That's like saying to the parent of a son and daughter, you're only allowed to care about one of them. And it's the kind of zero-sum thinking that is doing so much damage to our politics and to our culture. We can think two thoughts at once. We can do two things at once. If there are real problems in a society, and responsible people don't acknowledge and address them, irresponsible people will exploit them. And that is already happening on this issue, both online and at the ballot box. We cannot leave a vacuum by neglecting this issue. The future cannot be female. Nor, of course, can the future be male. The future has to be for every single one of us, every boy and girl. We have to rise together. Thank you.